What if everything we thought we knew about Stranger Things is wrong? What if the real villain isn't who we think it is? And the heroes? They're not alone. Imagine if Dart never died, if Callie returns with unfinished business, and if Will holds a power that could change the fate of Hawkins forever. In this video, we're unraveling a massive theory that connects three mysterious characters, Dart, Callie, and Will, into one secret role that could define the final battle. Could Dustin's old pet be the key to taking down Vecna? Could Callie, Eleven's long-lost sister, be the real Sorcerer? And is Will hiding something even his friends don't know? Let's break it all down. Let's start with one of the strangest and most emotional storylines in Stranger Things history. Dart. Back in Season 2, Dustin found a weird little creature in his trash bin, fed it a chocolate bar, and named it Dart. At first, Dart looked like a harmless slug, but as the days passed, he evolved, literally, into a full-blown demodog. That's when fans realized Dart wasn't just a strange pet from the Upside Down. He was dangerous. But what happened next surprised everyone. Dart didn't attack Dustin. Even in the tunnels, when he could have killed the entire group, he didn't. Dustin gave him a chocolate bar, and Dart let them go. That moment proved something. Dart still remembered Dustin, and that emotional connection might not be gone. So why are we talking about Dart again? Because many fans believe he might still be alive. Yes, we did see him collapse after 11 closed the portal in Season 2. But here's the thing. Did we really see him die? Or did we just assume he did because the other Demodogs fell unconscious? It's a detail many fans missed. The portal closing didn't kill the creatures immediately. It cut off their connection to the hive mind. That same hive mind, we later learn, is controlled by Vecna. If Dart was simply disconnected but not destroyed, that means he could still be somewhere in those tunnels beneath Hawkins. But let's go one step further. What if Dart wasn't the only one? What if other Demodogs survived too? And what if Dustin, who once trained Dart with treats and kindness, could do it again? Think about it. Season 5 is expected to be a war. The group is outnumbered, outmatched, and running out of time. What if Dustin figures out a way to control, or at least distract, the Demodogs using something as simple as candy bars? It sounds crazy, but if Vecna loses control over the hive mind, and if the creatures still recognize Dustin as a friend, this might be their secret weapon. It makes sense when you look at how the Demodogs acted throughout the show. They weren't just killing machines, they were following orders. And if that control gets severed, if Vecna is weakened or distracted, the Demodogs might not be evil at all. They might just be confused, instinct-driven creatures. And who better to guide them than the one human who once earned their trust? Dustin. Now here's where it gets really interesting. If Dart returns, it won't just be a reunion, it could be a turning point in the battle against Vecna. Imagine an entire army of Demodogs no longer under his command. The same monsters that once hunted our heroes could become their greatest advantage. And if Dustin leads them, using nothing but brains and chocolate, it would be the most unexpected twist in the entire series. That's why this theory isn't just wishful thinking. It's based on clues that have been there all along. The show doesn't waste moments. Dart's bond with Dustin mattered, and in Season 5, it might finally pay off. But that's just the beginning. Because while everyone's been focused on 11 and Vecna, there's one character we've all forgotten. Someone with powers that don't come from the Upside Down, but from inside the mind. And she might be the missing piece to the puzzle. Callie. While the world of Stranger Things is filled with monsters, portals, and parallel dimensions, the most mysterious part of the story might not be the Upside Down, it might be Callie. You remember her, right? Also known as 8 or 008, Callie was introduced in Season 2 as 11's sister, another child experimented on at Hawkins' lab. She didn't have telekinesis like 11, but her powers were just as dangerous – illusions. She could manipulate people's minds, make them see things that weren't there, and trick enemies into believing false realities. And then, she vanished. After a controversial episode that took 11 to Chicago and introduced Callie's rebel crew, the storyline was never mentioned again. But that's exactly why fans believe it's not over. The Duffer Brothers don't just drop major characters without reason. They planted a seed. And now, in the final season, that seed might be growing into something much bigger. One of the strongest theories floating around right now is that Kali will return in Stranger Things Season 5. And not just as a side character, but as the Sorcerer. That's right. As you may know, the title of Episode 4 of Season 5 is The Sorcerer, and it immediately triggered speculation in the fandom. Most fans assumed it referred to Will. After all, he's been deeply tied to the Upside Down since the beginning, and his story is still filled with secrets. But there's a problem with that theory. In Dungeons & Dragons, where much of Stranger Things gets its inspiration, Will has always been a cleric, not a sorcerer. That's a huge detail, because in D&D, sorcerers are born with their magical abilities. They don't get their powers from gods or external sources, they come from within. And if we follow that logic, the only character we've seen in the show who fits that description is Kaylee. Think about it. Kaylee wasn't injected with anything, and she didn't gain her powers from a device. She was born with the ability to project illusions into people's minds. That's exactly what a sorcerer in D&D does, distorts reality using internal magic. And if the writers are naming an entire episode after this archetype, they're clearly planning something big. So what role could Kali play in the final battle? Let's say the group is trying to communicate across realms, or trick Vecna in some way. Who would be better at illusion and deception than someone who can control what people see and feel? In fact, her abilities might be one of the few that Vecna doesn't expect, or fully understand. If he's relying on raw power and mind control, Kaylee's subtle manipulation could turn the tide. But it goes even deeper than that. Kaylee's story was left unresolved. We never found out what happened to her, where she went, or how she fits into the bigger picture. That's not just bad writing, it's intentional mystery. The Duffer Brothers said years ago that Kaylee's arc wasn't finished. So if she returns in Season 5, it wouldn't just be for nostalgia. It would be because her powers are needed, and maybe, just maybe, she's been watching from the shadows all this time, waiting for the right moment to return. Imagine this. The gang is facing a moment of hopelessness. 11 is overwhelmed. Vecna is winning. Suddenly the battlefield changes. Night turns to day, monsters vanish, portals close, and it's all a trick. Not from 11, from Kaylee. That would explain why she's been silent. Maybe she's been hiding on purpose, training, expanding her abilities, or even assembling others like her. Because let's not forget, she wasn't the only one at Hawkins' lab. There could be more gifted children, others with powers who never escaped. And if Kali is the one who finds them, organizes them, and leads them, then she might not just be a sorcerer in name. She could be the leader of an army, one that fights not with weapons, but with the mind. And if the fight against Vecna is partly mental, as we've seen through the hive mind, visions, and psychic attacks, then someone like Kaylee might be more important than any weapon or gate. Still, not everyone agrees with this theory. Some fans believe Kali was a one-off character, a failed experiment by the writers that they chose to abandon. And to be fair, her episode in Season 2 was divisive. Many didn't like the change in tone or the sudden shift to a different city. But Stranger Things has a habit of revisiting the past, resurrecting ideas that once seemed forgotten. Kaylee isn't just some random side character. She's connected to 11. She shares the same origin, and she has a power set that could be used in brilliant, unexpected ways. That's why her return would make perfect sense, especially if the stakes in Season 5 are bigger than ever. Because this time, it's not just Hawkins at risk. It's the world. And speaking of the world, there's one person who's been feeling something wrong from the start. A character whose connection to the Upside Down has always been more than just physical. Someone who hears things, senses danger, and knows when Vecna is near. Will Byers, the boy who started it all. And in the next section, we're going to uncover what Will might be hiding, and how his secret role could be the final twist no one saw coming. From the very first episode of Stranger Things, Will Byers has been at the center of the mystery. He was the first to vanish, the first to experience the terror of the Upside Down, and the one who's never been the same since. But over time, the story shifted. Other characters took the spotlight. 11, Hopper, Max, even Vecna. And yet, Will remained in the background, quietly sensing danger, feeling chills down his neck, and keeping secrets he hasn't fully shared. Now, as we approach the final season, fans are starting to realize something shocking. Will Byers might be the most important piece of the entire puzzle. Not just because he was the first victim, but because he might be the only one truly connected to the Upside Down on a level no one else can understand. Let's look at the evidence. In Season 2, after being rescued, Will wasn't just recovering, he was still linked to the other side. He was having visions, burning sensations, and even moments where he seemed possessed by the Mind Flayer. But here's what many fans missed. When the Mind Flayer was forced out of his body, that didn't break the connection. It just ended Vecna's control. The bond remained. Will still felt things. In Season 4, this became even clearer. Every time Vecna attacked, Will felt it. He sensed it. He even told Mike, "He's not gone." That kind of warning doesn't come from guesswork. It comes from something deeper. A link that goes beyond fear. A connection that still lives inside him. And that brings us to one of the biggest theories about Season 5. Will Byers isn't just a victim, he's a vessel. A bridge between the human world and the Upside Down. And maybe even more than that. Some fans believe Will has powers that haven't awakened yet. That the trauma he experienced wasn't just painful, it was transformative. Remember, 11 gained her abilities through intense experiments and exposure to otherworldly forces. Will was trapped in that other world for days. He breathed its air. He was hunted by its monsters. He saw its landscape and lived in its darkness. If there's anyone who could have absorbed something, anything from that realm, it's him. So how does this connect to the Sorcerer theory? Well, what if Will is not the Sorcerer, but the focus of the Sorcerer's power? Think about it. Kaylee may have the ability to manipulate minds, but what if Will is the one whose mind is most vulnerable, or most powerful? In Dungeons & Dragons terms, he could be the chosen one type character, the vessel through which a greater power flows. And here's where things get really wild. Some believe that Vecna isn't trying to destroy Will. He's trying to merge with him, to use his body as a host, or his mind as a gateway. That's why Will keeps feeling him. That's why the chills never go away, because Vecna hasn't let go, and maybe Will hasn't either. There's even a darker version of this theory that suggests Will could be turned, not willingly, but by force. Imagine if Vecna realizes that 11 is too strong to beat in a straight fight. So instead, he targets Will, someone who's already been touched by the Upside Down, and tries to use him as a Trojan horse. The group wouldn't expect it. 11 wouldn't want to hurt him. And that hesitation could be what Vecna needs to win. This idea is terrifying, but it makes sense when you look at how the story has been built. Will has always been the emotional core of the group, the one they protect, the one they love. But in Season 5, that love might become their greatest weakness. Of course, there's another version of this theory that flips everything. What if Will isn't the one who's vulnerable, but the one who defeats Vecna? What if, instead of being controlled, he finds a way to use his connection against the enemy? Maybe he can sense Vecna's presence because a part of him remembers the hive mind. Maybe he can track the creature's thoughts, movements, or weaknesses. If so, Will wouldn't just be important, he'd be essential. The only one who can truly navigate the Upside Down without fear, the only one who knows its rules, and the only one who can walk into that darkness and walk out alive. It's also worth noting that the Duffers have said Will's story will be central in Season 5. That tells us a lot. They're not done with him. In fact, they might be saving his biggest moment for last. If the final season is about closing doors, literally and figuratively, then Will might be the one who has to do it. Maybe he's the only one who can seal the gate for good. Or worse, maybe he has to stay behind to make sure it never opens again. That would be the ultimate full circle. The boy who was taken by the Upside Down becoming the one who locks it away forever. Tragic, heroic, and unforgettable. But this theory becomes even more mind-blowing when you look at how Will's story might intersect with Callie's powers and Dustin's connection to Dart. What if all three characters, Will, Callie, and Dustin, are the keys to defeating Vecna? One controls illusion, one understands monsters, and one has a psychic link to the enemy. Separately, they're vulnerable. But together, they might just be the perfect combination to break Vecna's control. And in the final section, we're going to bring it all together, Dart, Callie, and Will, into one unified theory that might explain how Season 5 ends and who survives. So now, let's put the puzzle together. Dart, Callie, and Will, three characters who seem to have nothing in common on the surface, may actually be the key players in Stranger Things Season 5. One is a creature from the Upside Down who formed a strange, emotional bond with a human. One is a powerful illusionist with unresolved ties to 11 in the lab. And one is a boy forever changed by his time in the darkness. But what if all three are connected by something deeper? What if their stories were never meant to be standalone arcs, but separate pieces of one final explosive payoff? Let's start with what we now know. Vecna controls the hive mind. His power is rooted in psychic domination. He bends reality, infects the mind, and shapes the Upside Down to match his will. But what happens when that control begins to slip? When 11 weakens him? When the gate is threatened? Or when his grip on the creatures fades? That's where Dustin comes in. If Dart survived, if even a few of the Demodogs remain disconnected from the hive mind, Dustin could potentially lure them back using something as simple as trust, chocolate, or memory. Dart proved loyalty in the tunnels once before. If Vecna's hold is broken, those monsters might act on instinct. And if Dustin taps into that bond again, they could turn against their former master. That would flip the battlefield instantly. A horde of monsters, once controlled by Vecna, now fighting on the side of Hawkins? That's not just helpful, it's game-changing. But physical force won't be enough. Vecna is more than a brute. He's a manipulator, a strategist, a mind that twists the world around him. That's where Callie comes in. If she returns in Season 5, and there's every reason to believe she will, her powers could directly counter Vecna's. Illusions versus illusions. Psychic against psychic. We've already seen that Callie can make people see what she wants them to. Entire landscapes, people, threats, they all become clay in her hands. So what if she uses that ability to deceive Vecna? Not just to distract him, but to trap him in a false vision. To make him believe he's already won, only to discover too late that it's a trick. And if Callie and 11 reunite, not as enemies, but as allies, their combined strength could be unstoppable. One shatters minds, the other shatters dimensions. Together they could be the counterweight to Vecna's terrifying power. And then there's Will, the quiet, observant one who's felt everything before anyone else. What if Will becomes the one who senses when Vecna is weak? What if his body still responds to the movements of the hive mind, not because he's possessed, but because he's tuned in? Like a psychic radar. He could alert the group when Vecna shifts, when he's vulnerable, when the connection starts to falter. But there's a more extreme version of this theory too, one that's darker and far more dangerous. What if Will is the gateway, the final portal? Not just emotionally tied to the Upside Down, but physically linked in a way no one else is. Maybe Vecna's end goal isn't just domination, but transformation. Maybe he wants to fuse the two worlds together, and Will's body, or mind, is the final key. If that's true, then saving Will won't be enough. He'll have to fight back from within, from inside the connection. That's where all three storylines converge. Dustin may be the one to lead the creatures. Callie may be the one to break Vecna's illusions. And Will may be the one to stop the connection from becoming permanent. It sounds like a fantasy, but this is Stranger Things. A world where kids fight monsters with music and mind powers. A world where chocolate bars can tame beasts, and sisterhood can bring down psychic overlords. Nothing is impossible here. And that's what makes this theory so compelling. Because all of these clues, the emotional goodbye to Dart, the unexplained disappearance of Callie, the lingering fear inside Will, they've all been carefully placed. The show has spent seasons setting up these moments. And in Season 5, it's finally time for the payoff. Of course, there's no guarantee that things will go the way fans expect. This is the final season. That means not everyone will make it. Sacrifices will happen. Endings will be permanent. But maybe, just maybe, these three characters will have one last chance to prove how important they really are. Imagine it. Dustin standing before a pack of freed demodogs, commanding them with nothing but memory. Kaylee casting illusions so strong, even Vecna can't tell what's real. And Will, broken but brave, facing the darkness inside himself one last time. It would be the most unexpected team-up in the show's history, and it might be the one that saves Hawkins. So, what do you think? Could Dart really be alive? Will Kaylee make her return as the Sorcerer? And is Will hiding something even deeper than we've been told? Maybe these theories are wild. Maybe they're impossible. But Stranger Things has always thrived on the impossible. The question is, are you ready to believe?